All right, so continuing on here with Chapter 7, Part 2. See if I got everything where I want it. Good. All right. Okay. We'll start off today by talking. This is number 7 again on your list here. Number 7 is opposition to A.J. Andrew Jackson and Jacksonian democracy. Number 1 here, or letter A. So wealthy planters. Wealthy planters feared him. They felt that the federal government was demonstrating way too much power here under Jackson. Remember, we talked about some of the ways he expanded the executive branch, and he had the spoils system really in place. There, of course, was they threatened nullification of tariffs, so they wouldn't recognize them. There was also some rumblings about secession during this time period. And of course, Jackson threatened with troops when those events occurred. Part of that nullification crisis. We also see, remember this is at the end of the era of good feelings, we have the Whigs form. Jordan, where are they? The what? The Whigs? Is that what you call them earlier? The Whigs?
Whigs.
Whigs. The Whigs formed, all right. We also have some issues with racial treatment here. Western movement kind of assumed that Hispanics and Native Americans would just be the inferior race, and so there's the issue here with manifest destiny. Brought this up before. And Hispanics and Native Americans suffer, right? Of course, there's the Trail of Tears. We talked about the Europeanized Cherokees that were kicked out of Georgia. There was also extensions here of slavery. This idea of allowing slavery to continue and white supremacy being prevalent in the Jackson age here. Jackson fought abolitionists. They allowed a gag rule on the issue of slavery in Congress. There's also some issues here with being labeled propagandists. Some of the politicians here. Basically, these people supported the wealthy, but said that they acted for the commoners.
Supported the wealthy. Yeah.
But said that they acted for the commoners.
Some racial treatment. Is that glare bothering you? Yeah. Is there any way you can turn off those lights?
No.
You think the glare?
Oh, there's a way, but I'm not going to. I'm just saying, I won't be able to see anything then, right? We'll be in the dark. All right, let's see here. Next thing. Let's talk about social transformations of A.J. here. religion. Let's talk about that during this time period. In 1850, 3/4 of the people say that they are religious. There's this thing called deism. It's popular by some, and was founded and actually was followed by the founding fathers. Anybody remember what deism includes? AT?
Well, I believe that there could be a God, or there was a God, but he's not effective for the more reasons.
He's a clockmaker. He set everything into motion, just let it go. All right? That's deism here. There's also Unitarianism. Which is the belief that God is a loving creator. He's a father figure. But people ultimately control their own destiny. We also have the Second Great Awakening. Great Awakening. Now, I have down here 1730s and 1740s. Now, I know that can't be right? It's got to be 1830s and 1840s. Does that sound more realistic here, folks?
Yeah.
All right. The Second Great Awakening is essentially an attempt to return to conservative religious practices. Some of the key elements here are the Methodists and Baptists. And these people are, they attracted the poor and those who were non-traditional in religion. There's also the camp meetings. Of course, Jonathan Edwards. And George Whitefield. Remember George Whitefield was a drunk? Who were famous figures during the Second Great Awakening?
Wasn't that the first? Wasn't that the first? Yeah. Yeah. Wasn't Finney the second? Yeah.
Oh! Yes!
All of a sudden.
Touche!
That's what that.
Was Whitefield first or second?
First. He was a George. Yeah, he was a bar chief.
These guys are First Great Awakening, huh?
Yeah. Finney.
It's Finney who's the Second Great Awakening. Good catch, AAP students. Wow. And now the student has become the teacher.
Another mistake. They mentioned them in chapter 7. So.
What's that?
We're going down the tube.
Actually, that was an error that was planned to see if people would catch it.
Oh, okay. Obviously.
Craig, why are you being so critical today?
Yeah, Craig. Why are you being critical?
And why are you hating on me, Craig? Why are you hating on me?
This mom put me in
Yeah.
a terrible mood.
It started in English.
Yeah, we have a mandatory football meeting on Friday.
Okay, we'll talk about that. All right. We'll figure it out.
So.
Okay, let's wait until when we're done with everything, we'll talk about it, okay? Shh. Okay. We've also got, so everybody got that correction in their notes? All right. Nice job. Good catch, folks. Good catch. I should probably change that. No. It's Finney. F-I-N-N what? E-Y? Okay, let's talk about some educational reform here as well, as part of the social transformations. There's Horace Mann in Massachusetts.
I don't understand that. This is like the worst section of the whole book.
You know what, guys? I understand that. That's why we're getting through it right now. I know this part's not very much fun. All right, Horace Mann, who is from Massachusetts, he sets public funding for education. Pretty important, important cat there. The Common School, of course, Fond du Lac, North Fond du Lac High School is what? Horace Mann High School. That's where they get the name from. All right, there's quite a few Horace Mann schools around. There's also some reform movements that take place socially during this time.
There's a lot.
For example, we've got the reform movements that are inspired by the Great Awakening. And part of this is the belief from the Second Great Awakening that on earth you should combat evil. Evil. All right. Some examples here of some reform movements. We've got women. During this time, they were considered the keepers of national morals. All right. They kind of helped to lead this movement. Women gained more power, especially on the frontier, and they were kind of in supply and demand. All right. On the frontier, women were.
I did. You know what I mean? You know what I'm saying? Can I put prostitution?
What was the name? No, it wasn't like it wasn't any. It didn't have anything to do with prostitution. It had to do with the fact that there was a lot of men out there trying to make their way, and so when women would come by, there's actually I was reading this book about some states and settlements that were made, and people trying to get women to come out there to find mates for these prospectors. A lot of settlements died down because they had just too many men. What was that term called that women were kind of the keepers of? Republican motherhood is what I'm thinking of. But you should write down in your notes cult of domesticity and Republican motherhood. And those are terms that we might talk about, but they're two terms that you want to definitely know going into the AP exam. So Republican motherhood and cult of domesticity. You should review those terms. I'm interested to hear what you guys find about them, all right? Maybe if we have some time in the hour, we'll double check on those real quick just to make sure we're brushed up on them. Some of the reform movements that took place, people thought were hypocritical, self-centered. Some people felt that some of the reforms that were taking place were to basically benefit those that were kind of behind the reforms themselves. There's also the start of the temperance movement. People felt that excessive drink was impacting the family. It was impacting labor. It was increasing crime. And basically led to rowdy social occasions. AT, question?
Oh, I was just saying I found a big definition of cult of domesticity.
All right, we'll wait until we're done with this recording, then we'll talk about it, okay?
Life in
All right. So, the whole idea behind the temperance movement was choices that people had, that the movement had. They had two choices. They could either try to encourage people with temperance or moderate use of alcohol, or they could try to pass legislation. So temperance or moderate use, or they could try to pass legislation. Women's usage actually decreases during this time. And so when we see the word, you hear the word teetotaler, it's people who are against the drink. T for temperance, right? All right.
Teetotal or teetotal?
I think it's teetotaler. I think it's total. Pretty sure. I'm not sure. AT, goggle that bad boy.
Teetotal.
All right. There's also reform that is taking place in jails.
Teetotaler.
Teetotaler? Meaning what?
Just abstaining from alcohol.
Okay. All right. Jails are no longer seen during this time as just for punishment, but to help. We start seeing the term correctional facility used. We also see the word penitentiary used.
Is that why they're called like correctional institutions?
Yes. This is not just a punitive matter, even though there are punishments that are being doled out for people who are going to prison, but it's also seen as a penitentiary, meaning penance, to pay your penance, to pay for your sins, and then of course the correctional facility to try to help rehabilitate the people who are in trouble here.
Yeah,
There's also issues with mentally ill people. There's Dorothea Dix. Remember, she was the one who fought for better treatment and living conditions for people at mentally ill hospitals. Now, these are my favorite parts of the entire textbook here. I'm about to speak to you right now about. This is really captivating here. So I hope that you're all paying attention, and you should take notes because you never know what they're going to throw at you guys in the AP exam. But while we're talking about social transformations, how remiss of us, and this is actually some of my favorite literature, I'm not going to lie to you guys, talking about the old transcendentalists, right? Everybody here has Mrs. Mum for AP, right?
Oh, yeah.
You guys talk about the transcendental movement in there?
Oh,
there's some heavy stuff there, right? Thoreau, Walden Pond, good stuff. Basically, transcendentalists, they wanted to, again, you need to write this stuff down because there might be a social question here. They wanted to avoid conformity. They wanted to get to know nature, and in getting to know nature, they hoped to connect with God. There's also, transcendentalists, they thought about the world. And there was an air of civil disobedience. Kind of, it's a hint of civil disobedience. Now, we look at the transcendentalists, you could say that there's probably some connections between the transcendentalists and the beatniks, and of course the beatniks become the hippies, right? So, same kind of idea. Literature during this time. Literature becomes very dark. Authors start to look at the faults of the human soul. And so one of the authors during this time is Edgar Allan Poe. There's the utopian movements. Which I believe, when we look at if my local history serves me correctly here, if you've ever gone through Ripon, I took my son to Ceresco Park on Saturday, and he went absolutely bonkers. because he figured out how to climb up and go down the slides, and he'd wave bye to me and say bye when he'd go down the tube slides. But then when I tried to put him into his stroller, that was not a good situation. I'm about 5 blocks away from Ceresco Park. He cried for 4.5 of them. He was really upset. But anyway, Ceresco was I believe my history serves me correctly, it was a utopian movement in the Ripon area. And there was a fight between whether this town would be called Ceresco or if it would be called Ripon. And it kind of came down to the post office being awarded to Ripon, and so Ceresco kind of faded away. But some of the utopian movements here that took place during this time, their goal was to design perfect societies where everyone could work together. There were over 40 that were attempted. There were some uncommon sexual practices that these people went with. Yeah, was it the Oneidas and the Coitus Reservatus? I'm probably going to have to put this at TV14 now on YouTube. Thanks a lot, folks. People desired independence from a market economy. And so the Oneidas, of course, I have written down here. I should probably put 40 attempted and failed. Oneida, free love, male birth control, this is what we just talked about there, that term. There's also the Shakers. And these people were a very religious group. And they actually practiced eugenic selection of parents. If I remember, I think my cousin, I have a cousin who, I think she went to a Shaker village. Were the Shakers the one where the men and the women lived in separate houses? Is that right? Am I thinking that correctly, or is that another group? What's up, Cohen? Eugenics is the, it's kind of playing with, yeah, selective breeding. Yeah. All right, AT, if anything about the Shakers, men and women living in separate spots here. Okay. All right, last person I want to talk about here is Alexis de Tocqueville. I never know. I always pronounce Tocqueville, but that's not how you say the guy's name because he's French and he's not Italian. So, yeah, it's me, Alexis de Tocqueville. I'm probably butchering his name, but that's okay. I had a teacher, a professor in college, not a teacher, a professor, who she taught the Renaissance, and she used to always pronounce names. And I asked her one time, "How do you pronounce these names?" And she said, "Well, to be honest, I don't really know how to pronounce all the names that I come up with. But when I'm teaching the class, as long as we all refer to it by the same pronunciation, we know who we're talking about. It's important." Okay. Oh, fair enough. He's a French guy who comes over and he kind of tries to answer the question of what then is the America, or is this America? And his finding as to what is America and why it's successful is that America is different because of the meritocracy that exists in the country. Meritocracy, not birth. So those of you who are here this morning know what meritocracy is?
America, not I thought you
Merit.
said
It's a meritocracy. Meritocracy.
The more successful you are, the more stuff you get.
Yeah. Based on how many skills you have as an individual. AT.
It just says, I think they did this separately, but it says here that it just talks about them that they live like perfectly equally, like women and men shared leadership, and they were just equal and everything.
Okay. I think it was a Shakerville issue too. All right. That's it for Chapter 7.